So if you can accept that, we are now recording.
Pardon.
So again, welcome to our virtual Central Plant Tour. So Kenny, feel free to take it away.
All right, welcome everyone virtually. Let's hope that this goes well. So my name is Kenny Seaton. As Ellie said, I'm the energy manager and the chief engineer here. So all things heating and cooling for the campus and all things energy. We're gonna kick our tour off in the beginning, which most, even the people that do the live tour, miss out. This campus, as some of you may or may not know, has one of the largest batteries behind the grid in Southern California. What that means is that we have a 1 megawatt, 4-hour battery here. So we could reduce our energy load by 1 megawatt for 4 hours. That's really equivalent to about 25% of what our load really is. The campus before COVID was doing about 4 megawatts of energy at the peak time of the day. And so this reduces us down so we're less. And why that's important is because about 70% of our electric bill is that peak demand charge that we get. So if we get a $100,000 bill a month, 70,000 of it is for these peak demand charges that we get. The battery helps it so that we use the same amount of electricity, but we don't have such a high peak. And so Skip's going to take you behind the fence there, and we're going to take a look at the system. It's a Tesla system that was, the parts are Tesla. Yeah, if we were live and I was there, I'd open it up and let you see, but you get to just see the outside. A whole bunch of little lithium batteries, and it's pretty cool, but it's boring, I guess. But what's unique is that the parts on this system are the same parts on a Tesla car. So there's a cooling system on this, and it's the same cooling system that keeps the batteries cool on this as it is on a Model S or Model 3 Tesla car. So they kind of built it, smart so that they wouldn't have to make a whole bunch of different parts. The system's been in place for about 3 years, and it saves the campus about $80,000 a year in those peak demand charges. So while Skip walks over, we're gonna be bouncing around a little bit. So we'll see if this works if I share screen. Ellie, tell me if this is working right.
Not yet. Don't see a screen. There you go. You can see it now.
So this screen is the actual campus energy that's being used right now. As I said, before COVID, this number was 4,000, and now we're 2,300. So the battery's helping us to keep our number down. This is actually live data. We're actually seeing the energy being used instantaneous. So let's go back to Skip. He's come into the central plant now. If you haven't been there before, he's in front of our Net Zero Center. Skip, you want to turn to the right? So this center was built with the help of interns several years ago. It is completely off the grid, meaning the extension cords, there's no power plugged into the campus. It has batteries, has solar, it has outlets and a big screen TV and fans and lights and drinking fountain, all that stuff. And it uses no electricity from the campus. The Sustainability Club has kind of taken it over as their place of meetings and stuff. And it gets a lot of really fun use now. We also talk about in that station the recycling, worm composting, living wall on the backside with some succulent plants. So there's a lot of different things that we educate and talk about in this center. Now that COVID's over, we need to replant some more stuff. Skip, look to the left, to the energy. So we talked about the battery. So the campus gets power from Edison at 16,000 volts. In reference to that, so your house gets power from Edison at 120 volts. So we come in, because we use so much more of it, we have to bring it in at a much higher voltage to supply enough. And so that power comes in at 16,000 volts. It then gets transferred down to 12,000 volts to that transformer that he's actually looking at right now. And then it gets distributed throughout the campus at 12,000 volts. And from every building, we turn that down to 120, 240, 277, all the different voltages that we need to run a campus. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. All right, Skip, let's go around to the cooling towers. Actually, while you're right there, Skip, turn around, look at our solar carts. So one of the fun things that we've done innovative is instead of plugging in the golf carts every night at the end of the day, we've started modifying them with solar panels and lithium batteries. And we actually have some carts that haven't been plugged in for probably 5 years. This last year, we're making some strides in solar and lithium batteries. And so we're expanding quite a bit on that. If any of you were here in previous years, we actually used one of these carts to help supply power to the farmer's market. The cappuccino machine guy, the first year we did it, the first week his generator failed and he needed power, and we just drove a golf cart out to him and supplied him with all the power that he needs. Again, off grid, so we're saving the environment. All right, let's go around to the cooling towers now. Thanks, Skip. Where he's at is at the central plant. We're directly to the east of the NS&M building. From this location is all of the heating and cooling. We make chilled water to cool the buildings, we make hot water to warm the buildings up. So we use chilled water to cool off the buildings. Basically what we're doing is if you think about your car and you think about the radiator on your car, the radiator, you run water through the radiator and it helps keep the engine from overheating. And so you have that water, then you have a fan and you're driving and the air is flowing through the radiator and you're getting warm air out as it takes the heat away from your engine. To cool the buildings, basically what we're doing is taking a much larger radiator and we're pumping ice cold water, about 55-degree water, into the radiator and then blowing air through it. You could experiment, you could take a fan at your house, like a box fan or one of those fans, and take a washcloth and wet it in ice cold water and put it over the top of the fan and let it blow air through, and you'll feel cold air, right? Kind of the same principle, but our water stays inside and we don't let it evaporate off. What's happening is we're blowing cold air into the space. So if we supply your space with 55-degree air and we're cooling your classroom down to 72 degrees, let's say, then in essence, when things are working balanced, we should be bringing about 73-degree air back out of the space. So we go in at 55-degree air, we come back out at like 73. That heat that we're taking out of the building goes into the water line and it returns all the way back to the central plant. And then we have to get rid of that heat somehow. And so that's what the cooling towers are for. So Skip, let's look over at the cooling tower. Turn around. Look up. There you go. So we have 3 large cooling towers here to get rid of all that heat. And if you've been to any hospital or if you've driven by any large industrial building or high rise or something, you may have seen something like this. There are always these big square things. They have a big fan either underneath them or inside them or on top. Sometimes they're round and shiny. And in the early morning, you'll see like a plume of smoke coming off the top. What that is, that's the humidity. That's the steam that comes off, because what we're doing is we're taking this water, we're running it through the top out of like a water sprinkler upside down, shower, let's say. And the shower runs down through the fill media, which makes the water split into a bunch of different directions and gets particles. And then we blow fan air up from the bottom. The air goes around the water droplets, takes all that heat and gets rid of it. And then we're able to go back out to the building. So let's look to the left while we're out here, Skip. We'll look at the solar thermal. Some of the other, you're in the wrong spot for me, sorry. All right, so if you look up on top of the roof there, You see the nice view of housing, the phase 3 housing. We're also supplying hot water to the campus, and we burn gas to supply hot water. If Skip looks to his right, they'll show you the hot water heaters. We have 8 of them for 16 million BTUs of hot water, which is really efficient compared to what we used to be. But the idea then is that we want to get even more efficient, and we don't want to burn gas. So someday the goal is to stop burning gas. One way to do that is we're experimenting with those solar thermal panels by creating hot water from the sun. Doesn't take any moving parts or any energy. And so that's one of the energy things that we're playing with right now. All right, let's go to the insides. You can go in the back door. There's, okay, that way, this way.
This is like a video game. We keep telling Skip which direction to go.
I'll stop right there for a second. So this giant green tank, there's so many things going on out in this yard, and we're going to see them up close a little bit when we go down into the tunnel. But we have a bunch of air handlers in the tunnel. Like I said, those big radiators that we pump cold water through. When we blow air across these radiators that have cold water in them, essentially what we're doing is drying out the air. So the air around that space, if the humidity is high, when we reduce the temperature of it, we kind of dry it out. And the humidity then drops out in the form of dew or condensate. So kind of like the condensate that's on your car in the early morning, right? Or on the outside of a glass of iced tea or something, or a cold beer. And in the past, we would just let that water go down the drain because we didn't pay for it or anything, right? It's just, it's a form of cooling. And so what we realize is that there's a possibility that we're running 500,000 gallons of water down the drain. And so now we're capturing that water and we're piping out all the way back here. And we're using it in the cooling tower. Now, the way I told you the cooling tower works is that we run that water through the sprinkler head down through the fill media, the fans blow up, and the heat gets dissipated off. Well, that heat is also the heat, or it's evaporating. And so we have to replenish that water. The cooling tower on average we burn off about 10,000 gallons every single day of evaporation to keep the buildings cool. And so that means we have to open the tap and refill the line with 10,000 gallons average every single day of water that is used for nothing more than it just goes off in mist up the top of the cooling tower. A lot of water. And everywhere you see one of these cooling towers is doing something like that. So we're looking for ways of how we can reduce that. So if we could save 5% even with the air handlers, it's huge. All right, so we're moving into the building now. So what you're looking at now are electric chillers. We have 3,000-ton electric chillers that make cold water, that 55-degree water, or that we use to get to 55-degree air. We actually run the water at about 40 to 44 degrees. On the left-hand side, you see the nice blue pipes. So the bright blue is the coldest water, and that's the water that goes out to the campus at about, let's just call it 40-degree water. And then the light blue is what comes back from the campus. So we send the 40-degree water out to the campus. It goes through all the air handlers or the radiators, and then we blow cold air into all the different spaces. And then we bring back warmer water, usually about 12 to 13-degree warmer water. And so if we send it out at 40 degrees, it comes back at 52, 53 degrees, and then we cool it back down and start the cycle all over again. So Skip just showed us our brand new nice decoration that we borrowed from one of the central plant employees, our new skeleton that protects the pump package. You can see all the different lines and stuff. There's our control room where we can control everything. Here's a view of a computer screen. This shows, I showed you the batteries. This one shows you the central plan and a building. We can look at that more if we have time later on. Moving through central plant, we're headed on our way down through the tunnels. We're walking by some big air compressors because we need compressed air for all the buildings. Actually, it's only really one building left that we control the airflow with air. So like an inner tube or a pneumatic cylinder. We're in the process of converting that stuff over to electric, and we have most of the buildings converted over except for like one building left. The Wi-Fi is a little shaky walking down into the tunnel here. So as he gets to a spot where we have reception again. So there is approximately a 1/4 mile of tunnel. Yep, you're good, Skip. We have a 1/4 mile of tunnel. We have a tunnel that runs to the underneath of SBS, and the tunnel path that he's taking now goes to the NSNM building, then it goes to the library, then it goes to LaCourte Hall. And if you look up, we see that all of the chilled water lines, the hot water lines, the natural gas, the IT infrastructure, all that stuff runs through the tunnel system. And what's nice about it is that most campuses don't have tunnels, and their stuff is buried in the ground. And when things are buried in the ground, Mother Nature tends to eat them. And so in 20 years, their pipes are all corroded and have to replace them. Our pipes have been doing really good since 1970s or so. So
Kenny, can I interrupt you? There was a question in the chat that I wanted to flag for you. So the question was, you showed the giant batteries, but where are the solar panels on top of the buildings? And number 2, what percentage of CSUDH energy comes from solar?
great question. We don't have any solar yet. We are putting it on 5 rooftops, and we hope that it will be online and operating in January. We're about to install just under 1 megawatt of solar. The batteries were not really designed for solar. They were designed for the peak demand. So our energy bill, the peak demand charge is the worst 15 minutes of the entire month. So let's just say we did 25 days really, really good. And then on day 26, we turned on every single light switch and every single chiller and everything at the exact same instant. Then the amount of energy we would need for that 1 second or 15 minutes would be really high. And so the battery kicks in to keep that number lower. And then we charge the batteries up when the peak is less, like at nighttime. But great question. We are working on putting solar on. If we're 4 megawatts on a good day when the campus is full and I'm able to put almost 1 megawatt of solar on, then 25%. Of the peak. Now the kWh is another number, and I don't have that number off the top of my head. So Skip's in our NSNM mechanical room right now, showing you the antique telecom system. So right now we put Wi-Fi down there so that he can talk. In the past, so now you can take your laptop, the technicians can take their laptop down there and they can log in and they can see all the equipment and they can make all the changes they wanted. A long time ago, they would come down there and if they had to make a change on something, they would have to call the guy in the control room, and they would push this walkie-talkie button and hope that the guy wasn't on break and he was sitting behind a desk and he actually moved the right valve. And so things have come a long way. The air handler that he's looking at now is a small air handler. This air handler here supplies heating to the NSNM North Annex. So where all the professors and teachers and offices are, not the main NSNM building, if you've been here for a little while. To his right, the beige tank and this red, nice shiny red thing. So this is where I talked about that condensate recovery system that we're recovering. So there's a couple of air handlers here, and there's some different things, and all of these things, we're piping that water instead of to the drain into this tank. And then this tank, when it gets to a certain level, pumps to the big giant green cooling tower tank. And we have about 3 of these stations throughout the tunnel system. All right, let's move down a little farther. If you were live, here you'd be. Hello, everybody, on their live tour. All right, so the next place that he's going to go is to a large air handler. So there's two types of buildings. There's a science building and there's a regular building. On a regular building, we can take and cool that air down to 55 degrees, send it into the classroom, come back with, let's say, 72-degree air, and then cool it back down to 55, and we recirculate. And then we inject a bunch of fresh air into that, but not all of it. On a science building, because of the experiments and stuff, we have, if it's a 90-degree day outside, we have to take that 90-degree air, cool it down to the 55 degrees, blow it into the classroom, and then just exhaust it out the top of the building. So we're not able to, recirculate and use that energy. We have to just use maximum energy for everything we do 24/7. So science buildings are super inefficient, and we do what we can to make them more efficient. We're going to show you. Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go in and look at Big Bertha, Skip. So the nickname for this air handler is Big Bertha. It's a 150 horsepower large fan. Why are you going backwards, Skip? Can you not hear me?
Does he actually have key access for this one?
He does. He does have key access.
That's okay, you got help.
Waiting for Jeff.
Ooh, fancy
Yes.
Halloween.
Fancy decorations. Yep. Turn the lights on. Go inside. So if you look to the left, those are those coils or radiators that I told you about that we're pumping the cold water through, and then we're pulling air through, and we're getting 55-degree air out the other side that we then blow through the entire building and then blow it out the exhaust. And then the condensate that would go into those little pans that runs down the drain normally. Today's not a real humid day, so we're not getting a lot of condensate, but normally that would just run down the drain. Now that's some of that water that we're bringing back and helping our cooling tower, so we don't need as much water in the cooling tower. And it's super loud in there right now. He might not even be able to hear us, but that's good, Skip. Let's move out. So that's the biggest air handler we have. We're going to go look at, we'll see a few more different sizes. Now he's showing you the filters where we clean the air. You're good, Skip. Let's move on. There's our elevator in the NSNM building. Yeah, that's okay. Let's go to the electrical area. So I talked about how we bring the power in at 16,000, then go to 12,000. Then underneath Skip's feet in the concrete, we have these trenches that are buried where we have big high voltage cables and stuff. That's phone stuff there. Let's turn around and look at the electrical. So behind this chain link area, we have these large transformers that convert the power from 12,000 volts to the 120 volts. The way the transformers work is there's a big coil of wire and it induces a current onto another coil of wire, and it, based on how many windings and the coil size and everything, that's how we get the voltage to what we want. Now there's no moving parts in there, but if you walk by this thing, they make a lot of noise, and really what that is vibrating. The metal is vibrating, and when they're brand new, they're nice and quiet. And as they get older, they get louder and louder. Let's see if we unmute Skip for a minute, if we can hear it. Can you unmute? Yeah. No, not gonna work. All right, mute yourself, Skip. All right. So next to this room, we have these big things that really they're big circuit breakers. They're kind of like the circuit breaker on your house. In case there's a short circuit or an overload, these things trip out. But at your house, it's only 120 volts, so it's not a big problem. Here, it's 12,000 volts. So we have to do something so that it doesn't explode, because 12,000 volts with oxygen and fuel makes a big bomb. And so these things are full of an inert gas that makes it so that there's no oxygen inside the thing. What we just found out this year is that that inert gas is one of the worst greenhouse gases for the ozone that there is, worse than refrigerants that they talk about. And so in the next couple of years, we're going to be working on getting rid of these and going to a more modern state-of-the-art one that doesn't have as bad of a gas. What these do is the power comes from the central plant, it goes into one of these, and then from there it will go to one of these will go to NS&M, and one of these might go to SPS, and one might go to COE, and then they'll go to another one of these, and it'll split off some more in different places. And so it's the way that we're able to transmit the power throughout the entire campus. Move to the drawing, Skip, to our map. Depending on what classes some of you are in, you may have, if you take any physics or engineering classes, you may have heard of something called a single line drawing. We have these large drawings so that when there's an emergency and the power goes out somewhere, and we know that, let's say it tripped out switch number, 5, then we can look on this map and say, okay, switch 5 is here. And if it's tripped out, then it also tripped out switch number 9 and 11 and 14, because the power runs through all those different places. So it's kind of the roadmap of the electrical system for us to help us with our troubleshooting to know just what all is affected.
Hey, Kenny, just a quick question that came up in the chat. Going back to the air handlers, how often do you change those filters?
Great question. So at least every year. COVID, we've probably done it twice. And we also, all of our filters are a MERV 13 or greater. The higher the number, the better filtration. So we're doing everything. We've done that for most of them. We had some 8s in some places, but when COVID hit, we moved things to a 13 filter. And when we change them, we also do there's this biocide cleaning agent that we spray on the coils that kills everything and sanitizes them and makes them clean. So now we're moving through the tunnel. We can see our IT infrastructure, the fiber optics, the IT phone lines, that kind of stuff. So then our next stop is we're going to play a game. Where are you now? So in order to make sure that we have, because we're 1 floor underground at least, we need to bring fresh air into the space. We need to exhaust some of the bad air and bring in fresh air. And so we have some exhaust fans and supply fans throughout the tunnel. So here's one location that we have a fan and a supply fan to bring fresh air in. So by looking at this picture, go ahead and type into the chat anybody that knows where we're at. We're underneath this location.
And Kenny, while they're doing that, there was another question that came up asking, have you ever had a day where multiple quote unquote lines went down because of overuse?
Not because of overuse, but we're pretty balanced and we can handle that. We have, a circuit just like at your house at the 110 volt level if somebody plugs in too many heaters or something. But we have had full lines go down when, we had a snake one time got into one of these large transfer switches and went across the lines and shorted it out. And so half of SPS was offline and half of extended ed was offline and housing was offline and things like that. So we've had that happen 3 or 4 times since three times since I've been here since 2011. So it happens sometimes, but not from overuse. All right, so nobody typed into the chat, so nobody knows where we are. Come on, somebody has to know where we are.
A lot of the students in the audience have not been on campus yet since they started during COVID, so.
That's true, that's true.
I have to give them a break.
So I'll help you out.
Someone gets library.
We're in between the library and the NS&M building. So now when you see there's a stairs to the left of that little intake grate, you'll know what that grate is for. It's actually supplying us with fresh air. So. Nice decorations. Skip, why don't you show the map right there? Where are you now? You are here. So for the tours, we printed up this little map. This will give you a little, we didn't look at it at the beginning. If you zoom out just a little bit. So if you see that line that goes up and down on the right-hand side there, that tunnel section leads off to SBS. And if you were to start in that far corner and walk from there all the way to LaCourte Hall, it would be about 1/4 of a mile. All right, moving on, Skip, thank you. So our next stop is the library north. And we're gonna go look at air handler number 3. Now, it's interesting when you look at this air handler, it looks huge, like Big Bertha, but if you look at the motor on it, it has this little bitty motor. And so it doesn't move near the amount of air that Big Bertha does, but it does look big. And Skip's being sucked in right now, because as he opens that door, it's drawing fresh air into that, and you'd be able to see your hair move and everything. There's our filter bank where, you talked about how often we change the filters. Those are our MERV 13 filters where, we're cleaning the air as it circulates through the building. There's another set. And so this just looks like a really big air handler, but it's not as big as Big Bertha. There are 4 of these that supply heating and cooling to all of the North Library. There's 3 in the basement area like this, and there's 1 up on the top floor. All right, let's move on, Skip. More of those 12,000 volts puffer switches or SF6 switches where we transfer power throughout the campus. Another one of our maps, because when things are down and it's important, can't be running back to central plant to find the map. There's a big mess of equipment down here because the campus is right now in the middle of a giant elevator renovation where we're renovating most of the elevators. And so the elevator company is dropping stuff all over the place, messing up my tour. Back up, Skip. Sorry, let's look at there's another one of our condensate recovery tanks. Hiding behind all the elevator equipment. So again, every one of these air handlers down in the basement, we're pulling this water all the way back to multiple tanks here and then pumping it back out to the cooling tower so that we can hopefully not use 10,000 gallons of water that day. All right, let's go to the logo conversation. So there's a story that back in the 70s, they had a contest to come up with the campus logo. So let's zoom in on the top one first, Skip. So the top one is the campus logo. That's all you guys, if you're freshmen, should know, right? This is the new branding. This is what we're known as. But it's good to know the history, right? So the campus expands, it gets better, we change, we stay up with the times. But in the 70s, there was a logo created. Now zoom down. And this was the logo. And the story is there was a contest to see who could come up with this design. And the story that I like best, and I don't know, I don't have proof, but it was a maintenance person that put in for this. And he got his inspiration from, there's a tunnel that we have that leads to the gymnasium. And we're not going to be able to see it there, but I'm going to show you a short video and see if you can tell during that video where this inspiration came from. So let me share my screen. All right, are we good, Ellie?
No screen yet.
Not yet. How about now?
Okay, now there it is.
All right, so let's hope this works.
All right, so this tunnel leads from the library to the gymnasium. And so we have our heating lines. We have some chill water lines. We have our infrastructure and all that stuff. And if you're not too tall, it's kind of a fun tunnel to take. Probably looks better if you're in front. Feel the nice cool air blowing through here. Watch your step.
We love this tunnel when it rains
Hopefully
if we
none
have
of
to
you
go
are
to the
home
gym.
claustrophobic, because you wouldn't like this very much. We're down below the ground. Because I figure they've been down here for this many years, this is probably a nice safe space to be if there was an earthquake. We get out to the end, we open up into this, like a big giant cave, is what I think of it as. So here we keep the equipment for the filtration and all the stuff for the pool.
So that's the swimming pool equipment. And that's fun. So let's go back to Skip. Stop share. All right, so does anybody see where that inspiration may have come from? Hopefully. Anyway, let's move on. And if you were on the real tour, they don't get to go see that stuff. So it's a little tight for people. So now is our next place of where are you now? And so we need to bring fresh air in. Even though these air handlers are down in the basement, we still need to bring, before COVID, the rule of thumb was 15% fresh air. So we would circulate the air, but we would always bring in at least another 15% of fresh air. If we didn't do that, then the CO2 levels would go up and you would all go to sleep in class and it would be my fault instead of yours for staying up too late. Now with COVID, we're trying to bring in as much outside air as possible. So anywhere from 50 to 100%, depending on the weather and how we can keep up. But that way we bring in more fresh air. It's a little hard to see on Skip's camera, but there's a yellow post and there's a yellow chain that goes around this square opening. Does anybody know where, anybody been around this area that it might look familiar? Give you one more minute to think about it. All right, so this is the backside of the library by the parking lot over there, between the library and LaCourte Hall. So now if you see that spot with the yellow chains around it, you'll know what that is. That's where we're able to bring fresh air in for these air handlers down here in the tunnel that we looked at. All right, let's move on. And I want to give a shout out to whoever interns were that decorated my tunnel. You guys did a phenomenal job. Thank you.
Yeah, decoration credit goes to Sustainability Club and our Sustainability Club president, who are very artistic.
Thank you. Past our tour. Yes, a few spare parts down there. Another big puffer switch, SF6 switch, moving power around the campus. So now we're walking in under the wall and we're going into LaCourte Hall. One thing, what I like to talk about at this particular section. So the smaller lines are the hot water lines and the larger lines are the chill water lines. What Skip is doing is putting a heat gun and showing us the temperature of these pipes. Now, in a perfect world, we would insulate these so that no energy could escape, and the outside of this jacket would be the same temperature as the area around it. But we can see that there's a big difference in temperature. We're showing 78 up here, 81 or something on the bottom. We go up to the chill water lines and can't read it because of his camera. 74, 73. And so what that shows is that we're still leaking energy. And so there's a whole industry on pipe insulation, right? And how can we insulate that pipe so all of the energy that we're creating at the central plant gets to where I want it and we don't bleed off throughout the tunnel system. The beauty of it is that we have a tunnel system. Like I said, most campuses, their stuff is buried in the ground and they're just a big heat sink that absorbs whatever energy is coming off of those. And in our space, it's not near as bad. Plus, like I said, our pipes are 1970 and they're still in really good shape. We take care of, we do the water treatment really good. It's good. All right, moving down. Mr. Pumpkinhead. So he's about to enter into a large area again with a bunch of transformers. And if we could do the sound, you would hear that these transformers are about twice as loud as the ones that we saw before, because they've been there since the 70s when the building was built, and campus is working on getting something better. The other thing that you'll notice is this nice, all right, so we have some sump pumps down here, right? So if it floods down there because we're below grade, we need to get the water out. And so if one of these pipes were to break, so we have to have some pumps throughout the tunnel system to keep it safe and keep the water out. The transformers create a bunch of heat. And so even though we're underground where it stays a little bit cooler, we're still in this one area. And so pan to the transformers. This area has 4 different large transformers that supply this building. And all those give off a whole bunch of heat, which means we have to air condition the space, which some people would say they have better air conditioning than my classroom. We're working on fixing that. But so if you think about your window unit at your house, for some of you, or if you've ever been to a house that has a window air conditioner, it blows cold air into the room. But if you were to walk around the outside, you would feel hot air coming out of that space. And so in order for us to air condition this equipment, we can blow cold air, but we can't blow the hot air into the same space. That would defeat the purpose. And so what happens instead, we take that hot air, when we convert it and we blow it into hot water pipes. And so the water absorbs all the heat. And so now, instead of having to have a gas water heater for people to wash their hands in the restrooms, we have one machine that electric with no gas that's able to air condition and keep our equipment from overheating, and at the same time create hot water for everybody that needs it in that space. So super efficient, much better use of energy. Some booster pumps in case we need to get more chilled water or something up to the roof or the higher floors. Typically, we're pretty good. All right, so now we're going to go into another air handler. We won't say where are you at now, but if you've ever been in LaCourte Hall, or if you ever go to LaCourte Hall, in the back area, in the patio area where the pottery and the art people do stuff, there's some big grills back there. One of them is a supply and one of them is an exhaust. We looked at some really large air handlers, and this is a large air handler, but this is called a fan wall. And I hope you can all guess why it's called a fan wall. It's a nice wall of a bunch of small fans. This is the return fan, and we can't see it, but on the other side of one of these doors is a supply fan. So we have one large fan that blows air throughout the entire building. And then we have another large fan like this one, or a bunch of tiny large fans that pulls the air back out of the building. So we have a nice balance. So what that does is it makes it so that the doors open and close correctly. If we didn't have that balance, like if this fan wall here, the return, were to shut off, then it would be hard to shut the doors because the supply would be blowing all the air into the space like a balloon. And if we don't return any of it, then it tries to get out wherever it can. And so the doors would be pushing open. At the same time, if we had the the return running and not the supply, then the doors actually get really hard to open because they're sucked shut because it's sucking air. Like I talked a little bit about the science building and an office building where we have to take that outside air and cool it down. Take a break just for a second, Skip. Show me the dampers. Okay, good. So if the air temperature outside is 90 degrees, then I want to bring 15% in, and I want to take the return. If I'm supplying the space with 55-degree air, and I'm cooling the space down to 72, then in theory, I should be returning 72, 73-degree air. And then I recycle that. I bring in a little bit of outside air, 15%, and I bring it back down to 55, and I just keep going. And so the energy usage, as good as I can get it. But let's say that the outside air was 60 degrees, or 65 degrees. When I gave this tour at 10 o'clock for Jenny's class, the outside air was like 65 degrees. And so why would I want to take 72-degree air and turn it into 55 when I could take 65-degree air? By doing that, I don't need as much on my chilled water, so my large electric chillers don't have to work so hard. And so what that's called is outside air economizers. We're making the thing run more economical by bringing in outside air when it's the correct temperature. When the temperature changes and gets warmer, and I'm trying to keep up with the whole building, then I close off these dampers and I don't bring in as much. What happens is if those were open 100% and we were bringing in 100% air, this other set of dampers on the right would be closed, and all the return air, instead of flowing back through, would then get pushed out the exhaust side that we walked through in the very beginning. It's a little harder to show on the film, but that's kind of the premise between the outside air economizers and what they're there for. Now with COVID, we're using more than 15%, but we're still not, depends on the energy levels. This is a set of filters that we talked about, right? So no matter what, whether the air is recirculating through the building or whether it's 100% outside or 15%, it always has to flow back through the filters. And so there's our MERV 13 filters that is cleaning that air and supplying it back to the space. It goes from the filters, it then goes across the coil or the big radiator that we have the chill water through, and we get the 55-degree air into the space. And that concludes our tunnel tour. Ellie, did I miss anything?
No, I think you had some more things you wanted to show us, but this actually might be a good time for the
Q&A?
opportunity drawing, if you think now's a good time.
Yes, now would be a good time.
Okay.
So,
do you want me to announce the instructions before you announce the question?
Yeah, I was going to do it all, but okay, go for it.
Okay, we'll divvy the load. We have a nice solar power bank charger for you for the winner of this trivia question. So hopefully you were paying attention. But basically get your typing fingers ready because we're going to be looking at the chat for the correct answer. So as soon as Kenny reveals the question, if you type the correct answer into the chat, first person who gets the right response will be the winner. So I'll be keeping an eye on that and announcing that winner as soon as Kenny goes. So if everyone is ready, Kenny, feel free to fire away.
All right, so we talked about the cooling towers, and we talked about how much water on average every day gets evaporated. Who knows the answer? Wow.
So,
That's
Case,
pretty good,
Gablish?
Case.
I think you won the last drawing as well, so I guess you're just the fastest typer and paying attention. So
I just like
so
that
Case,
he's paying attention. Thanks, Case.
Yeah, so Case, since you've won in the past, it should be familiar to you, but I'm going to send you my email here. If you can email me back your mailing address, and then we will get you your prize.
So
there you go.
A couple more minutes. So let us just real quick show you some of the stuff that we can see on the buildings. Everything is digitized, everything is brought into the computer so we can see the stuff. This particular screen is showing us that we have 3 chillers. Chiller 1 is the one that's running. It's supplying us with 41-degree water. The return water from the campus is 56 degrees. And so we're actually doing, that's really good. We're doing a 14-degree delta T is what they call that, the difference between the supply and the return. We have a delta T for air, for water, for different things. Our cooling tower, we have 3 large cooling towers. Each one has 8 fans. You see that one of those 24 fans is actually offline right now. After the open house, we're going to replace it. The cooling tower has the water is 67 degrees. And the towers are running at 64%. And so we're doing pretty good there. We can see how much water we're pumping throughout the campus. So right now we're pumping 1,000 gallons per minute through all those pipes that we went through in the tunnel system. We have one pump that's doing all that work and it's at 46%. We can see things like, let's see if Jose updated our graphics. So this is the SBS building. We just got done converting it from a pneumatic to a digital building. So when it was pneumatic, we really couldn't see anything because that data didn't transfer to the computer really well. And so now we put all electronic actuators and thermostats and all that stuff. So we can see there's 5 air handlers for the SBS building. We can see what temperature, what their output is, all that stuff. And that one is a little different. It has a hot deck and a cold deck. Some of the other buildings have just a cold deck. And then at the building level, we have a small reheat radiator that's in the ductwork that we supply hot water through. And this takes us to a floor plan. Oh, another summary. Floor plan, wrong floor plan. All right, let's see. Here's a floor plan of the 2nd floor of SBS. We can see what the temperature is in the different classrooms or offices and spaces. We could then go in deeper if we want to click on one of these things, and we can see what the variable air volume terminal looks like, what the flow is. On the hot deck side, we're doing 263 CFM. On the cold deck, 36, so we're doing a little bit more heating in this space. The space is 71 degrees. So we have lots of visibility into things, and the more every year we're bringing more of these buildings up to speed and up to the current technology levels so that we can control them much better. I think that's about everything that we wanted to talk about. And we have 3 minutes left, so we finished pretty much on time. Does anybody have any questions or any comments?
I don't see anything in the chat, but Kenny, what's next for you in terms of big projects that you're looking forward to this upcoming year?
That's a great question. So next big project is all of the exterior lighting on the entire campus. So the walkways, the roadways, the parking lots is all going to get replaced in the next 3 months, I hope. We're actually going out for bid. It's actually out for bid right now with LED lights with occupancy-based control sensors on them, so that it's possible we could do some wayfinding in the future with that stuff. We are the solar thermal, the lighting, Student Health Center. We're looking at doing a lighting retrofit on the Student Health Center. We're looking at doing a pneumatic to DDC, so bring the VAVs up to speed like this building here. We're looking at the facility services, upgrading their HVAC so it's energy efficient with the help of Edison, and doing a lighting upgrade over there, possibly turning it into the first net zero facilities yard in the system, hopefully with maybe some solar panels and some batteries. We briefly touched on it, the solar that hopefully should be online in January-ish. We would like to do some more batteries at the building level. So if you could imagine, Welch Hall or the Science Building or the new I&I building, we put a nice fenced in area and put a smaller battery over there so that those buildings could all run on their own if they had to. What am I missing, Ellie? I don't have
Doing so much. Do you want to talk about CEOP?
Sure. So some of you, if you've read any of the articles on the campus newsletters and stuff, there is a program with Edison. Our campus is leading all of the CSU and UC in clean energy optimization pilot. What that means is Edison in the past used to pay us 24 cents per kilowatt hour to reduce energy if we change lights and things. But there was a lot of paperwork involved and it was a pain, and they're trying out a new program where instead of getting paid for kWh, we get paid for greenhouse gas. And everybody knows what greenhouse gas is, right? So carbon, CO2, global warming, all that stuff. And so now the utility companies are starting to look at that from a greenhouse gas perspective. In the first year, our campus, because we were able to also convert the gas-fired chillers to electric chillers, we reduced our usage by 65%, our gas usage, and we only increased our electricity by 7%. Overall, that means our utility bill was a lot less than it was before that. And we reduced our greenhouse gas by 13%, something like that, overall greenhouse gas. And so we did better than the UC system, and we did better than the other CSU that was part of this pilot program. And so that's really exciting.
Yeah, and Kenny, we are at 101, and I know some students have to go to class, so we'll wrap it up there. But Kenny does a lot of great work. A lot of his info is up on our sustainability website. As Kenny mentioned, part of that pilot program, we're basically kicking butt across the UC and CSU for energy, reducing greenhouse gas, and actually saving you as students on your student fees and utility costs as a university. So all good things. And since some of you have to go, we'll actually cut it off here, and I'll stop the recording. Yes, I want to stop